are selling yourself short, and I'm pretty confident of it. If you're a craft artist and you're selling your work, I know the hardest possible thing is pricing our own work. Trust me, I'm giving you this advice today, and even I still struggle with it. So gear up. Let's talk about, money and pricing things and valuing ourselves and valuing our work. How about we do that today? And we try to get you to price your things better because you are worth whatever price you're charging. So come on. Also, hey, my name's Julia. I am a silversmith based in Asheville, North Carolina. My brand is called Overdraft. You can find my jewelry there. I've been doing this for just about 2 years now, and I think pricing is like one of the hardest things that we all need to deal with. I have a background in marketing and retail. I also have been an artist for much longer than I've been a silversmith, so I've had to deal a lot with pricing my own work. I've had a lot of people ask me actually for like what my formulas are and how I price my work, because I think it's clear that I am trying to show personal value through my pricing. I think the first thing I want to really get into is why we think that our prices are so high. I think it's easy to see the state of the world right now where there's a lot of fast fashion and consumerism, over consumerism, really cheap stuff, cheaply made in factories with horrible conditions, and just being mass produced for super, super cheap. Obviously, the world's changing, things are getting more expensive right now, but I won't get into that too much. But I do think that as a whole, consumers are used to paying low costs for the goods at this point. I think that we are very used to paying pennies for things because we now come to expect that, even if we actually know that that's not any good. It's like you buy a $5 t-shirt, it's like, how does that t-shirt only cost $5 when realistically it should cost way more? And you look at the implications and it makes a lot more sense as to why these things are just kind of unsustainable. And if you're here, if you're listening, I assume that you're a craft artist or some sort of maker or someone selling your own goods. First things first, congratulate yourself on being someone breaking that cycle, someone who is investing in care and handmade elements, or just like thought through things with good processes on a smaller scale that are much more intentional. I think that we need to, as a society, value that a lot more. It's just something really important, and it can be really hard to compare yourself and your work to the prices of what you see at these large retail stores, or even that you see online at, Shein or Temu or Amazon even. You see these names and just know that you can get a, wedding gown for $120 if you're looking for like a super cheap one. I know they go way crazy. That might be a bad example. But, you're used to seeing these things where you can get stuff for super cheap that should not ever really be that cheap. And yeah, so you're a craft artist, you're trying to break that mold, but it's very tricky, and I understand that. Now that we understand kind of the world and what's going on outside right now, let's talk about you and your craft business, or whatever your business is. This I gear mainly towards craft artists, but I do think that this could apply for most small businesses, especially if you're intentionally making your products on a smaller scale or with a small team, or even doing it solo somehow. We should talk about your work and what you're doing. I want you to think about all of your expenses for your business. Some of you may have, spreadsheets or QuickBooks or something really good to help you organize your expenses. But if you don't have one of those, just kind of maybe jot down or just think off the top of your head, beyond my actual materials that I'm using for the product, when it comes to if you're making soap, any of the chemicals or scents or molds that you use like to physically make it. Those things are one of the expenses. You should consider those. But I also want you to think about things like if you're paying a website subscription. I personally use Squarespace. This is not a sponsored video. I do pay my Squarespace subscription every month, and that's part of my cost of doing business. And that's a really important factor in what I'm making. So I want you to consider things like that. I want you to consider if you have a G Suite, you have a domain name, anything like that, those like kind of expenses that you don't think about too much. Maybe they come up once a year or once a month and they're just on auto pay and you're not thinking about them. Just remember that that's a part of your expenses and what you're doing. And when you are making your product, you're trying to make money. You need to make money to make it sustainable for you. So consider those. Next, I know it's the hardest thing, but I want you to consider your time. There's so many free time tracker apps online. You can just look up like time tracker, or you can get a stopwatch or use one on your phone or whatever. But when you're in the studio or in your office or wherever you make your products, I want you to start tracking your time at least as much as you can. I am horrible at tracking my time, so don't expect you to track it perfectly. But I do want you to start getting an idea of roughly how long your process takes. And so when you're making repeated products, you know roughly that this type of product, for me, say it's a signet ring. A signet ring takes me X hours to make. And that includes from brainstorming. This is not just physical labor. You are talking about your brainstorming time. You're talking about your sketches. You're talking about your trials and errors and your time making the piece. And if it fails, you know, that time that you need to remake it, you need to think of every single moment because that's all part of it. It's not just the physical time that you're there constructing it and then it's done. There's a lot more into the time that you need to consider. And then you need to consider, what's a fair wage? I was able to come up with that number for myself of what I would like to be paid if somebody was hiring me to do the labor to create these products. And that's not including any of the benefit of it being my own designs, anything like that. What would be a fair wage for me to get paid? And remember that this is probably a skill that you've learned. You've probably taken some classes or you're self taught, and you have a specialized skill that not everyone has. And so it's easy to look at, you know, other jobs and say, like, okay, well, Taco Bell is paying $13 an hour, so maybe I should be getting paid $13 an hour. Not necessarily, because that's not the level that you're operating at. You're operating at the level of somebody who has a specialization. Think of somebody like a plumber or a mechanic or somebody with a type of skill that you would hire to do something that you can't usually do. What would you pay them on an hourly rate? And consider that for yourself and say, this is my hourly rate for producing my products. So once you have all of that put together, try to document it somewhere. Think of all the things. I know it's so hard, but if you can think of those things, put them all together into one spot. So your expenses for every part of your business, your hourly rate for you doing that job, and then your materials that you've put into making this project. Put that into a sheet and just see roughly what your cost is. And you can divide your expenses, say your Squarespace subscription, just as an example, whatever kind of subscriptions you have for your business or recurring expenses. You don't have to pay for that every single time that you make a product. If I had to pay my Squarespace subscription every single time I made a pair of earrings, I would have to like jack up my price on earrings way more because that would be crazy. So if you can get a rough idea of how many pieces you typically make in, say, a month or a week or some sort of timeline that works best for you and your brain and your business, then you can calculate, okay, how much does this cost per month? And divide that per how many pieces you've made. Say that you've produced 25 pieces of jewelry, you divide your Squarespace subscription 25 ways, and that's the cost involved in each individual piece of jewelry for your Squarespace subscription. Like I said, whatever types of subscriptions you have, but that's just my example. Awesome. So now you have an idea of roughly how much your items cost to produce. That's a fantastic starting point, but this is where a lot of people get tricked up. Oh wow, I know how much that costs now, so I don't know, add a few bucks on top of that and we'll be good. No, no, no. Don't do it. Don't do it. I know it's tempting to just say like, okay, I just need to make a little bit, or I want my prices to be accessible, which is something I hear all the time, and I so respect that. But listen, I know you. I am a craft artist, and I am also in the struggle. I want my work to be accessible as well, but I also want my work to be sustainable, because if it's not sustainable, then I can't continue to make more of it, and then it's not accessible to anyone. So you need to be paying yourself what you're worth. So I want you to go and figure out a formula that works well for you. You need to find a number that you would like to multiply your cost by to get a retail price. When I was working previously in retail, we would often use the number 2.5. So we would multiply if something cost $10 to produce or wholesale or whatever it is, we would multiply that by 2.5. So that would be $25. And that would be how we would get our price for retail. I think that coming up with a number that works for you, and you can look up maybe norms for your industry or norms for what types of products you're making. You can look that up and just see what's kind of ballpark and what's going to help you. I do think that that 2.5 number is a really good one to go off of. Sometimes 3, depending on if you're selling vintage clothing. I know some people go up to, 5, 10 times the cost of the product just because the cost tends to be pretty low. You do have a lot of labor involved with cleaning and all that stuff that goes into vintage business, but that's a whole different video. So now you think you have the answer to your problem. This is what my work is worth. No. And some of you may not agree with this, but I think that it's very important, and I think that this is only going to help you succeed, is that you're missing one critical part of your equation, and that is you. Who you are. Who you are as a brand, as a person, however you're portraying yourself through your business. There's only one of you. That's it. And you're special. And so people need to pay to have access to that something special. When we're getting something mass produced, it's okay to use formulas and to just kind of follow like the cost analysis and just do kind of what makes sense. But if you look at higher luxury brands like Gucci or Prada, Hermes or Balenciaga, whatever it's going to be, at what point does the quality stop going up, but the name and the status is growing, you know? And that's the thing, is it's your name, it's your status. And it's okay if you want to be accessible, and so your name is here, but you're gonna price it down here just that way you can get people to get more of your products. I understand and I respect that. But realistically, there's only one of you. There's only one of your business. If you have a team, that's great, but you're probably a small team if you're watching this video and trying to take advice. You are your brand. So this is your name here. Your price is valuable. Value. Yes. Value. Okay. This is going to be the most vague part of this video, but what are you worth? And at this point, I'm no longer talking about your hours, your labor, your materials, anything like that, your brainstorming, your education. At that point, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about how special are you? How exclusive are you? How elevated are you? How do you want your brand to be portrayed? In consumer psychology, typically we think the higher the price, the higher the quality. And so if you bring your price down too low, even if you're trying to be nice and accessible to people, which I, once again, do think is a fantastic thing, at what point are you undermining yourself and people think, oh, this must not be a very high quality product because the price is all the way down here? You are your own brand. So see value in that. And you can do things to make your brand more accessible, such as doing giveaways or promotions, or even if you know somebody can't afford a certain thing, offering them a sliding scale type of option. If you're doing an in-person market in your hometown, that's going to be a smaller demographic, and they're not going to be spending crazy amounts of money on stuff, and you understand that, it's okay in person to have some of those in-person prices and in-person deals, because ultimately that's going to be a temporary thing and that's not going to be your entire market. But when you start talking about being online and being on a national or international platform, or being at markets in very big cities that are very high traffic, like Renegade or West Coast Craft, or any of those few that I name a lot on my channel, you want to start considering how you're valuing your brand, because people want that name. And once they see that there's value in that name and they start to recognize it, then it becomes exciting to them. It's like, oh, Overdraft is here at this time, or, Hey Amy makes fantastic bags, and I want to see that brand again. I want to see those bags again because that made me feel a certain way. That made me feel like I was part of a club. That made me feel exclusive. I think that that's very important to think about in pricing your products. I do think that there's probably a point in which you may struggle if you go too high up in the very beginning, where you probably won't get the quantity of sales that you're looking for. Most of my pieces are priced between $100 and $300, which I do think is kind of a higher price point for anything that I would be able to buy for myself. But at the same time, when I go to these markets and people see my brand and they resonate with it and they want to be a part of that brand, it actually encourages them to buy it, seeing that price point because they feel like they're getting something exclusive. I think it's really fascinating that we as artists and craft makers and small business owners tend to think of ourselves as, oh, we can't be worth too much, we can't be too expensive. But realistically, you get to name your price. And at the end of the day, if people don't like your price, they'll walk away. But maybe they'll keep thinking about you or thinking about how they can become a part of your club. If you want to be more accessible, maybe offer a line of products that are more accessible, but keep your main focus on your quality, on your brand. For example, I sell t-shirts and tote bags for under $50 when nothing else from my brand is under $50. But those are things that people can take with them and they can wear the t-shirt or the tote bag and they can feel like they're a part of Overdraft and kind of have that in their mind of like, oh cool, I got something really cool and special and I'm still a part of this cool thing, even if I couldn't invest yet in the actual jewelry. I also tend to give out free stickers and free zines, which this could be another video that I go into because I think it's very important to talk about how you view markets and in-person events as marketing. But I do think that it's great to have some freebies to, raise your own brand awareness. You want people to know who you are, you want them to recognize you the next time you're back at the market. The more little free things you can give, the more that you can get people into your club, into the Overdraft Club for my business, or into the April Rugs Club, who's one of my favorite craft vendors who I always see at markets. Just get people into your club, and then you can start charging that premium. So I really hope this helps you consider your pricing. I know I didn't talk hard numbers, but realistically, that's some research you're going to have to do on your own. I will say that if you're not feeling confident still after this video, go online and look at some brands that you really respect and look at what they're charging. I'm going to finish my final thoughts inside because my phone died and I'm still on these bad boys, which makes getting outside really fun. So, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It is really helpful. I'm a small channel. I would really love to make this something sustainable for me to help me continue doing my business. And it's been a challenging year. So you supporting this video really means so much for me. As always, I also like to plug Chat Fair, which is my community craft fair chat room on Discord. I don't get any real financial benefit or anything out of you joining, but it is a small but mighty community that I'm trying to grow to just get craft artists all in one place who do craft fairs and talk all things shows, help to get organized, get feedback, and just have a place where we can all just be very real and ask important questions and have meaningful conversations. That was something I struggled with when I started doing kind of more national craft fairs, and I just really want to have a place that keeps that kind of centralized. So the links in the description. Feel free to join, and thanks. Appreciate you watching.